Okay, let's start walking the walk. Let's get to the actual drinking. But we're going to learn a whole bunch of stuff before we even start to do that sniff and swirl. Let's start this lecture with bottle service. We're going to look at different bottle types, different containment vessels for wine, and then we'll get to the actually opening of bottles. Now, for starters, this is a standard 750 milliliters. Most of the bottles you're ever going to come across in the wine stores or the grocery stores or anywhere on planet Earth, a standard 750. That's metric system. Sorry, Americans, you'll just have to get used to it. But here is the standard, okay? But there are actually a variety of other sizes that you will come across. I'm going to show you some of the more common and then a few uncommon. You actually can get exactly half a bottle in something that we call, amazingly enough, a half bottle. A half. A lot of sparklers come in halves as well. You can do the math, 375 milliliters. For those that say, oh, well, my spouse or partner doesn't drink wine at all, and I hate opening up a whole bottle by myself, look for the half bottles then. About a solid 2 glasses of wine. By the way, Randall, how many does this serve? A solid 5 glasses of wine. So again, we're talking solid. We're not talking little 1 or 2 ounce pours, but a standard 750, about 5 good pours. And thus, a standard half, about 2.5 good pours, 2 big glasses of wine out of a half. So you can do that even if you're drinking by yourself. And little heads up, I like to buy halves whenever I see them, particularly with more expensive bottles, because I don't want to pay $50 for a bottle that I've never had before, but I might gamble with $20 on a half. And this is planting a seed for a future lecture. I hang on to these because you can use them as storage devices. When you open up a bigger bottle and you're like, oh, I only drank half of this, you can pour the rest into a half bottle and cork it back up for better storage. But you know what? We can even go a size smaller. There are halves of halves. Little baby bottles. Aren't these adorable? We call these splits. 187 and a half, I guess, if you're doing the math on that. 187 and a half milliliters. Mostly, this is a Prosecco, sparkling wines. They're pretty much one-shot deals. That's a glass if you want to be really special. Take your own bottle to the restaurant, have 1 glass of wine. So, now let's start going up the line. You've seen the standard 750. Here's the split. Here's double it to a half. Double it again, standard bottle. But we actually can get bigger. You will see, and I have predominantly only seen these in German and Austrian wines. And this is a full liter bottle. So it's basically a bottle and a half. 750, half over again, 1 full liter. Again, I've never really seen them too often in the New World wine category, and not even many out of France, but Germany likes the 1 liter, so do Austria. So it's a slightly bigger bottle, compare for size, bottle and a half, liter bottle. We can go bigger though. These are ones you'll see oftentimes, particularly at party type environments. And this is a Magnum, and it's a liter and a half. 2 standard bottles, double down, Magnum. I've seen a lot more of these coming out of France, more available. Price-wise, actually a lot more affordable as well. So 2 bottles in 1, the Magnum. These are actually a lot better for long-term storage as well. The bigger the vessel you have, if you're going to keep a wine for 10 years, even better. It marries well and blends more well with itself in a bigger volume. So Magnum. We can get even bigger though if you really want to party. We can move up to, what was this one? The Methuselah. Let's get all biblical. A 6 liter bottle. You won't see these too often. This is a really special occasion. But for those hardcore partiers where 6 liter Methuselah is not enough for you, let's bump it up even bigger. How about the Salamanzar? Wow, look at this sucker. And what are we talking about? 9 liters, essentially a case of wine. Do the math, 12 times 750, mark it all the way up. 1 full case of wine in a single bottle, the Salamanzar. And you know what? You can go even bigger than that. And this is the point at which you need a saber or sword to knock these off. We'll do that later. Not. You can go even bigger, and I think it's called the Nebuchadnezzar. Isn't that the ship from the Matrix? And how big did we say Nebuchadnezzar was? How many? 15 liters of wine. If you ever get to a party with a Nebuchadnezzar, call me because I want to party with you. So that is the lineup of bottle sizes. Let's move back down to the bar and look at different vessel types for wine. Back that way. Okay, now let's check out the different types of vessels that wine comes in. As we suggested already, this is a standard 750 bottle. 95%, 99% of the bottles you're ever going to see. And bottles are the primary way that wine is stored, transported, and served. Okay, this is kind of the standard, a glass bottle, but it's not really the only one. And the device that's holding the wine in the top of the bottle is becoming less and less standard as every day goes by as well. We typically think of a bottle, a glass bottle is your wine bottle, with the beverage being held in by a cork. Okay, cork. Everybody knows cork. It's from the bark of the cork oak tree. You actually cut the stuff. It's natural. Okay, it's springy, and cork is so awesome because it's flexible. So you can compress it and smash it into the top of a bottle. Then it uncompresses and makes a seal. That's what's so awesome about cork. However, there are lots of variations in both the vessel that we're carrying wine in today's world and what we're holding the fluid into that vessel with. If you want to pan down here, you can see that cork is awesome. Natural cork is great. However, natural cork can become increasingly expensive with more and more wines being made on planet Earth. And natural cork actually has some drawbacks. One of which is that it can become infected with certain bacteria that could get into the wine. If you've ever heard of something called a corked wine, it's not that cork has gotten into the wine, it's a bacteria harbored in the cork, in natural cork. Other problems with cork is that it can dry out over time and disintegrate. So if you're storing bottles, they may get maybe gooey or gushy, or if you have the bottle sitting upright, they might dry out and the seal is then broken. So cork is awesome, been used for a couple thousand years, but it's not necessarily the greatest thing or the only thing in today's world. Because now we have a lot of cork alternatives, one of which is synthetic cork. Basically plastic or some sort of polymer. I don't know. I'm not into this stuff to know the technical terms. But it is not a natural cork, and it does have some flexibility, therefore you can compress it, and it does make a pretty good seal. A lot of folks were worried originally when these synthetic corks started coming out, and more people started using them 10 years ago, because they are a cheaper alternative. A lot of people were worried that maybe they don't let the wine breathe well enough for long-term storage. They are now making synthetic corks that do have some breathing capacity, more like natural cork. So that problem is slowly being solved already. The other good thing about synthetic cork is that it does not harbor, or does not have, naturally, that bacteria that can infect wines. So there are some strategic advantages to using things like synthetic corks and even screw caps that we'll get to in just a second. But looking back at natural cork, it's like, oh, but it's kind of the classic, traditional, awesome way. And I actually have a couple different corks here. Standard cork for a still or table wine, and you see this flared cork. That's for champagne. You see that it's flared on both ends because champagne, I should say sparkling wine, by its very nature, having been charged with CO2, is under greater pressure. So you have the flared cork that you compress even more. When you stick it down in the bottle, it flares back out again to account for holding in greater pressure. So two different types of natural cork, synthetic cork, but now people are even dabbling with other crazy styles. I've seen more glass enclosure / corks put on the top of wines and sealed with wax. That's pretty good, pretty cool. Seems not that practical, but whatever. And also something called a plonk. And these are, again, a plastic synthetic polymer something that are really awesome because they're so reusable. The shape makes it really easy to smash back into a bottle if you want to recap or recork it. So plonks, I always save my plonks to use in just about any size bottle. Now to zoom back up to me. Standard glass bottle for table wine, standard glass bottle for champagne, standard glass bottle for sparkling wine. That's not the only alternatives though, even though we've now looked at a diversity of different cappers for those. Screw caps are an up-and-coming rage too. Heck, I don't even know if you can call it a rage anymore. These guys have been out for a decade or two, mostly experimented with and adopted early by the Australians, which are big into experimenting with radical technologies and radical storage devices. So screw caps, when they started coming out 10 and 15 years ago, people are like, oh, that's terrible. How terrible? It's not any cork at all. That's not tradition. That doesn't look right. And that just means that screw cap wines are cheap wines. Hold the phone on that one. more and more producers are now adopting and using screw cap because, quite frankly and honestly, it's a superior enclosure device. Sorry to all my cork producing friends. Cork's awesome. I love it. I love pulling it and hearing that pop. I love it too. But if you're looking at the reason that you have a cork or any top of a bottle, it's to hold in the beverage, hopefully keep air out and keep bacteria and infection out, right? And in that sense, screw caps are awesome. They do hold the beverage in pretty good. They also, because of their very nature, they're not cork, they're not even fake cork, it's nothing in there. So they do not allow for any penetration of bacteria or oxygen that can spoil the wine. So screw caps, not just for cheap wine. In fact, it is a complete misconception here in today's world that all screw cap wine is cheap. It is not. I can assure you that there are a ton of mediocre to cheap wines that have corks in them as well. So do not judge the book by its cover and do not judge the wine by the container it's in. And on that note, let me finish with the next big rage, which is boxes. And again, much like screw caps were a decade ago, people immediately assume, ooh, a boxed wine? That stuff's nasty. Because of the original boxed wine, or the most mass-marketed boxed wine, which was Franzia. And that was a pretty mediocre to cheap, not so pleasant experience wine. However, don't judge the book by its cover, because more and more producers, and serious producers, are moving to boxed wine alternatives as well. Why? It's cheaper than glass and cork, way cheaper. It has a foil bag on the interior, and I know everybody's seen one of these things, at least in passing. And foil is actually pretty darn good for enclosing a wine because it allows for zero oxygen penetration, zero bacterial penetration, and also zero light penetration. Light can actually affect a wine as well, and light can get through glass. So boxed wine actually is superior for a whole variety of reasons, especially cost. And it's not just the cheapo crap wine anymore. These are a variety of boxed wines from a variety of countries and a variety of producers. It's not just rot gut stuff. It's serious producers that do make most of their products still in bottles, but then they say, hey, well, I've got this other line of wines. I'm going to put this stuff in a box. The things are easy to operate. They don't break. They're easy to ship. They're easy to move around. They're great to take on a picnic. You'll just pop the side of it out here, and a little awesome little tap comes out, and you're good to go. The other reason I really like boxed wines is because they don't go bad as quickly, right? Once you open up a bottle, and we're going to do that in just a second, you immediately are taking off that seal so oxygen is getting in. If you don't finish all the wine in one sitting, now you have a half-empty bottle that has oxygen in there, bacteria can get in there, things can start to go to work, the wine can then start to go bad, oxidize or get a bacterial infection. That's not good. With boxed wine, that really can't happen because as the wine is coming out, there is no air penetrating back in. The bladder just shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. So boxed wine, quite frankly, can even last longer than a standard bottle once it's been opened. Anymore, when I go to a restaurant, a mediocre restaurant, an okay restaurant that doesn't really specialize in wine, I look for boxed alternatives. And here's why. If I go into a restaurant that doesn't really know much about wine, but they have a house wine, I have no idea how long that wine's been open in their back kitchen. And if they don't really know about wine, it could have been open back there for a week for all I know. And it could be nasty, it could have an infection, it could be oxidized, and if they don't know, they're just gonna keep pouring it. Because they don't wanna lose money. They'll just keep pouring this week-old bottle and giving it to you. Here's this week-old Chianti, have it. I don't like to gamble with house wines in a place that doesn't know about wine. So I say, do you have any boxed wine? Because I know you can't mess that up. Even once it's opened, it's still good to go a week later, 2 weeks later, maybe even 2 months later. Who knows? It depends on the quality of the wine, but the enclosure is solid and those things can go for quite some time. One last point on the boxed wines. The standard boxed wine size, where is it? 3 liters. 3 liters. So if you see this, you're like, whoa, this is a $19.99 boxed wine or even a $40 boxed wine. $40 for a box of wine? What a ripoff. And by the way, look, they don't even look that big. This does not look like a big container. But here's the deal. It's 3 liters. 3 liters, again, you do the math, is 4 bottles. There's 4 bottles of volume of liquid in this box. So when you see the price, $40 for this box, divide by 4, and that's the bottle price. Hey, wait, $10 a bottle. This is a Cabernet Sauvignon from Washington State. This is good stuff. Powers is a good brand, and it's $10 a bottle, and it won't go bad once I open it, and I can pour by the glass because my wife doesn't drink, and I can have a glass every night with a meal for 2 weeks. Boom. That's why boxed wines are awesome. Now let's look at opening some boxed wines, but you know what? Let's look at opening them, all of these bottles and the devices we use to open it for our final component of the bottle service. Okay, now we want to get drinking, so we actually have to get these bottles or boxes or whatever it is open. The ending of our bottle service is actually these tools that look kind of complicated, a little scary for the first time you see them, but this is what you need to get familiar with in order to get these bottles open. Boxes are pretty simple. You pull, rip, and go. And then you have awesome things like screw cap wine. Watch this. Here's the tool you need, and there, it's open, good to go. But when it comes to most wines with corks, whether natural or synthetic, we're gonna have to do a little more work. And that's what these tools for. And my awesome friend Randall from here at the Vintage Cellar is gonna help us out with this because he's only opened maybe 500,000 to 750,000 bottles in his experience here in the wine store and abroad. So first things first, Randall, we gotta get the foil off the top of the bottle, right?
That's correct.
And most bottles, although not all, do come with some sort of foil enclosure. Why, by the way?
Well, in the old days, they had a problem with mice and rats in the cellars eating the corks, so they would put foil lead on the top to keep the mice or the rats from chewing on the corks.
Yeah, and lead as an encapsule, that's always good for you. Now I actually think it's more for show,
yes,
isn't
absolutely.
it? Yeah, but it's a tradition again that everybody kind of does it and puts this thing on here. It's really quite unnecessary. I think it's kind of helpful if you are storing wine in the cellar for an extended period of time, that if the cork leaks, it'll kind of leak out into the capsule and it'll collect and recrust itself. So it's kind of helpful for that
It is
too.
helpful for that, yep.
All right, but we kind of want to get it out of the way. Now, if you're going to go to a fancy restaurant, they're going to use a lot of special devices and actually do special things to just tear off the tippy top.
Yes.
And if Randall wants to go for it, here's one such device you can use. Okay, and this is a foil cutter, and I'm going to flip it over and show it to them. It's just a simple device that you just spin on the top of the bottle to cut the foil off. Other ways that you can do it, again in fancy restaurants, is that they'll pull out the top, some little paring knife out of the top of a corkscrew, and cut it off slowly and then tip it back. I always just think that's comical, quite frankly. I'm not sure why. Because the way that me and Randall, and I think most of you should do it, is this way, which is remove the foil. Most of them are pretty loose. So, but you don't want to look like a fool in front of your significant other. So don't be like, yeah, I saw this on the show, so I just grab hold of this and rip. Because actually, some of them, like this one, don't come off. So before you want to impress your family and friends, twist it. If the encapsule is really loose, just give it a tug and get it out of the way. Here's why I like to get it out of the way, because if you leave it on in the fancy way that restaurants do it, then you're just risking that it's going to be a source of dribbling. So when you go to pour and it catches on that, if it's not done right, it gets in the way and starts dropping stuff away. So I just like to get the foil off. Okay, that's easy enough though. Get the foil out of the way entirely and make it look fancy if you like. Now we got to get these corks out though. And I'll let Randall take that, and we'll start looking at some different types of implements. I'm going to pan down to some implements here. The foil cutter we already got, okay? That's just to cut the foil, that's all it does. Some fancy openers, like this one, will actually have a built-in foil cutter. Ooh, look at that. That's what that thing is for. So you can use that to cut the foil, then it's ready to go as a corkscrew as well, okay? I did want to point out one thing before we actually start opening wines, and that is this monstrosity. I call it the butterfly. What do you guys call it? A lever? A winged corkscrew? This is a very popular model. You'll see it in all stores, in dollar stores, and cheap places everywhere. And these are not so hot. Why do you think they're not so hot, Randall? You never use these, right?
Never, ever use these.
Okay, why not?
Well, this right here is more of an auger or a drill bit. So it will drill a hole all the way through to the wine, which isn't that good if you want to grasp the cork and then pull it out, what you have is a hole through the wine rather than a way to pull the cork out.
Yeah, you can see from side comparison what you're trying to do is get this screw embedded into the cork as much as possible with as much surface friction as possible to grab hold of that cork to pull it out. And you can see this, again, it's more like a drill bit, that it's too thin, it's too small, and if you pull too hard, you'll basically just rip a hole in the cork. So the butterfly, the lever, corkscrew, whatever, here's what I like to do with them. Get them out of my way, all right? You really, if you're gonna start drinking wine, want to get a real tool, and that is a standard bartender corkscrew, all right? One that does have the little pear knife up there to get foil out of the way, because if the foil doesn't easily pull off, you can then cut it with a knife and just peel it off. And then this is a 2-lever corkscrew?
Yes.
Yep, all right. So we'll start with the 2-lever, and I'll let you pan over to that if you want, Katie, so that Randall can show exactly how. Actually, want to tip it that way so we can show the people as much as possible. Go through the process of exactly how you're going to do this.
Okay, I try to get it as centered as possible, because sometimes when you first put it in, if you don't put it right in the middle, it'll go down the side and you can once again rip the cork completely up. I find it easier to start with to spin the bottle a little bit. Once you've got it started, you just turn. And now with the 2 settings, you can get the cork screw very far into the cork, which helps because occasionally you will have a cork that will break in half. So the farther in the corkscrew gets, the less likely it will break.
But you don't want to sink it so deep as you can't actually get that lever on the lip there. And
So
it's called 2-lever because, as you see, it's actually got a piece that swivels there. So you want to get that first setting. Oh, right there, look, it just sits right on the lip. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to get in the way.
That's perfectly fine. And then you pull up a little ways, and once you've got that far, you can then go to the second and pull that up.
Oh, look how beautiful that was, and easy. Did you have to strain really hard to do that?
No, it was actually very easy with very little force.
We invented the lever 10,000 or 20,000 years ago because it's just so awesome for just such things, and we're still using the lever to this day. But there are some other opening devices that look really cool. Some of them look kind of intimidating, but can make the job even easier. One that you will see, although not too often, is this. What do you call this one?
2-prong.
The 2-prong. Wait, I don't see any prongs. Oh, there they are, the 2-pronged.
It's also called the asso. This is correct.
Asso. Is it Japanese? So the 2-pronged opener. And this is good for what types of corks in particular?
I find it works very well with artificial corks because if the cork starts to tear up, this will actually go around a cork. This, in some cases, actually works better. I've had this corkscrew fail. I will go to this one as a backup, and it will almost always work.
And I also heard that it's also good for if you're opening up older wines, 10 or 20-year-old wine, where the cork may be starting to disintegrate a little bit, and you're like, ooh, you don't really want to put a screw in it because that might rip it up more. This one is not going to tear the cork up at all because you're going to work around it, and then simple.
Just pull it out.
It's not even gravity. What is it? It's friction. Friction's at work.
Yep.
So I'll let Randall show, and you see that one side's a little longer than the other, and he'll explain why that is as he's opening it.
So you find the part that's long, you put that in first, and you're working it just down along the side of the cork. So we're going to put that down just a little bit, and then we're going to rock it back and forth
As you're
like
pushing
this.
down.
You can see I'm pushing down. And once you got down to a fairly decent amount, you then twist while you're pulling up.
Look at that. Look at that. Pretty as a picture. Actually, this is a good one to use. That's a tight cork. And there you go. And again, the benefit of this is you've not torn the cork up at all. It's good to go to reseal and reuse. So that's another one. Again, you don't see that too often. I think you should learn how to use it just so you look super cool in front of all your family and friends. There are even seasoned wine veterans that are scared of these. They're like, oh, I never use that. Yeah, take it to the next level. Get even smarter, be able to do it. And finally, there's a whole slew of stuff. Because wine is becoming so popular in America, there's just a whole slew of new toys. There's ones, and I don't even know, what do you call this? Just,
Boy,
it looks complicated as hell to me.
I think screw pull are the people that originally copyrighted this one, so I believe they're called screw pulls.
And I've seen these things table mounted, bigger affairs with huge levers. And what's the principle at work here? Why do I need this big fancy thing to do this? Or what's the advantage?
The principle at this is When you push
Oh.
it down, it automatically forces the corkscrew to spin, and then when you pull up, it locks in and pulls the cork out. And by having a lever like this, it takes even less force. So particularly people with arthritis, this works very well for opening wines. It takes very little force on your hands or your wrists to be able to get a bottle open.
And again, this is for those that are drinking 5 to 10 bottles a day, and you just can't be bothered with doing all those bottles individually. So full on, the whole service. Here you go. Randall's going to open up a bottle of Diavoli, awesome Italian wine. A Chianti. He is cut off the top of the capsule to get it out of the way. Now he's using this super cool looking corkscrew. And wow, look at that. Man! It doesn't get any easier than that, does
That is
it?
the easiest corkscrew I've ever used. And you just bring that back down, pull it up, and it takes corkscrew off there too.
About how much does that go for?
This goes for about $40.
40, probably 50, even at a high-end retail place. A standard waiter's 2-prong,
Most places $10,
$10. The fancy,
more like 5 or 6.
$5 or $6. And oh, I threw the butterfly off the table already. Should never pay more than $1 to $2 because you could only be using it to make fun of it. We got one more to go. We did not show the creme de la creme opening up a sparkling wine. I'll let you take it from here, Randall.
Okay. First thing, most sparkling wines will have a little tab where you can pull this tab to remove the top part of the foil, so you can leave most of them have very fancy labels on the bottom part of the capsule, so that allows you to remove that. Next thing you need to do is unwind this right here. Now when you do this, you need to make sure you keep your hand on the top, because these corks have been known to shoot off and make holes in the ceiling or take people's eyes out.
And actually, I will interject at this point and say that you should always be using a bar towel. Typically, the proper way to do it is always have a bar towel for the precise reason that you always want to have it covered in case anything at any given second blows. It's not going to go anywhere with the towel covering it. You should always have it pointed not near humans as well. And never under any circumstances shake the stuff up. That's if you win the Super Bowl. Other than that, no. You actually want to make sure that sparkling wine is as stable as possible, chilled, not shook up, not moved around, precisely because we don't want anything blowing up when we open it, and we don't want it fizzing actually when we open it. Okay, so you undid the wire cage. And by the way, how many half turns did you do?
6, I
Yeah,
believe.
it's usually almost exactly 6 half turns to get the wire cage free. You leave it on there, you just loosen it, and now we got it covered with a bar towel. Now what do you do?
When I have covered the bar towel, I spin the bottle, which loosens the cork up, and as it loosens, the cork starts to come up, and then I can just pull it off.
You didn't even know it got opened. So he stabilized the cork with his hand and turned the bottle. And you'll see that the pressure will, every time you turn the bottle, the pressure is actually just pushing the cork out just a little bit. You're not trying to jerk it out. Just let it work itself out. Rambling it on the table, that's cool. If you want to make a show of it or you're in a restaurant, you'll see people put it on their hip because it's kind of like firing a shotgun. You don't want it to kick out from under you. You don't want to be like, yeah, boom, oh, I lost it. So you would also place it against you on your leg or your hip and then turn until it's released. The perfect champagne or sparkling wine opener will just give the slightest kiss of a hiss if you've done it right and it's been stored properly. And that's how you open up sparkling wine. And that's how you open up now wines from a variety of different enclosures in a variety of different ways with a variety of different tools. But now we're ready to drink the stuff. So we're going to pull out the glassware, the decanters, and start doing some sniffing and swirling. And that's next.